Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, welcome to The Spiritual Path. I am one of your hosts, Kim Gilster, the Spiritual Synergist, and we also have Hafizullah Sufi.
Hafizullah.
How are you doing? Hafizullah. I know, I don't pronounce it correctly.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah. So, just to let you guys know, I'm a little off today because my grandfather is making a big transition, and so it's a lot of energy to deal with. So bear with me if I seem a little bit slow today, okay? So what were we going to talk? Oh, yes, we were going to talk about duality, divine masculine, divine feminine, and how that works for twin flames today. Yay!
This should be interesting. So, if I might, I'd like to say a little bit about.
I was going to ask you what.
Yeah, I'd like to say a little bit about my background, which I didn't. I sort of downplay it because, on one hand, it's from a certain perspective, there's a lot of kind of ooh about it, and from another perspective, it's like, who the hell cares what titles you have? But my trajectory on this being human gig that I'm doing currently has been 40 years in the Sufi tradition. That's been a big piece of it. And the particular tradition that I've been working in, it's not at all about doctrine. It's all about direct experience. And so the title I have, which is Sheikh, I got because I've got a certain level of chops. I wasn't authorized to teach until I was over 12 years in the tradition, and that's just 12 years is not a magical number. It's just that's when I finally got my poop in a group that I actually could teach under supervision. I've held this particular title, which is roughly equivalent to Swami Rinpoche or Roshi, for 15 years. And so everything that I say comes from my direct experience. It doesn't come from doctrine or something that somebody told me that I haven't tested in my own experience. So, having said that,
and in all actuality, I think that's why we get along so well. Because,
we get along well because
I did the same thing.
Yeah, we're both talking from what's real in our own experience and our own direct perception. When somebody says to me, because some of the things that we're going to say on this program today are going to push people's buttons because it's not what
triggers.
This is not the Barnes and Noble version.
No.
And so when I hear someone say, well, my teacher said, I want to know, what do you say? What is your direct experience? And if you don't have a direct experience from which you can speak a direct presential as your butt on the chair, then that might indicate a direction for your own inquiry. Because that's the only thing I'm going to.
And I did, and I had an experience this week where somebody said something about a video that I made. They said, well, I had my mentor of 12 years say that what you're saying is not true, or it was a little bit different perspective. And I said, well, apparently this person hasn't had the experience that I've had with this, but what has your experience been? So, and I hear this all of the time. Why is it that, so many people are just willing to say, oh, this particular being who appears to be enlightened to me is saying this, and so it must be true. No, I want people to question me. And then I want them to take that, okay, and really question themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because as an illuminary, okay, it is our job to make you question and find what it is that is true for you in your reality in that moment of now. Okay? Because your reality is not going to be my reality, nor do I expect it to be.
And don't stop inquiring. You know,
exactly.
always question. Always question.
Yes. Because
and that doesn't mean that also doesn't mean that it's relative. There are certain fundamental experiences that everyone has on the spiritual path as they progress, and it doesn't matter what tradition you're working in, but they are part of the fabric of a human incarnation and how we develop and unfold as spirit in this human incarnation.
And that's exactly why me as a yogi, pagan, whatever, I've studied and practiced many different traditions, can sit with you, who's in a Sufi tradition, or I sit with, Buddhist monks, and we have very, very similar realities.
I love jamming with Buddhists. I love jamming with Buddhists because the ones that have actually accomplished, and there is accomplishment in the spiritual path.
Or magicians.
Accomplishment is a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them, yeah.
Some of those, yeah, exactly. The people who are accomplished, yes. Mm-hmm.
So,
or at least those that are looking to accomplish. I have no problem with those individuals either, Or not that I have a problem with anybody, but I veer more towards those individuals. Because it's fascinating, and sometimes they can even bring new things to the table for me, right? Because as I teach, I learn. It's give and receive. Everything is always give and receive. If I'm not receiving, I don't have anything to give.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. All of us come to this thing of spiritual path from a sense of, most of us, from a sense of deficiency, because that's what the ego, the personal ego, is almost totally oriented to what's missing. And so we come to the spiritual path from I want to be a better person, or I want to fix what's broken in me, or I want to know secrets. And
I want to know love, or the twin flame path. I want to have.
I want to find. I want abundance. I want to. All that kind of stuff. And
we're
all
doing
of that,
twin flames, today.
Yeah. All of that. It's better to start somewhere than not start at all. But all of those things, which you will get at some point along the way, are still, if those are the only motivations, they don't have legs. There's not enough there to take you all of the way that the way can be taken. And at a certain point, they're all going to collapse. And the only thing that will see you through the really difficult parts, the really brutally difficult parts of disillusioning your soul of you, is the pure love of truth.
Which
and once you have that,
call your darkness, which some people call our darkness, okay? Because we really want to get into talking about this duality.
Let's do it.
We're 10 minutes into the show. Okay.
Well, that's what we're doing.
So let's do it. Let's do the duality. Okay. So, yes. So some people call what you're just talking about darkness of the soul. I don't think that's necessarily an incorrect label because it is a perception. It does not feel good. It does not feel good in any way, shape, or form. It is, and I've been through it personally more than once. And it's true, too, that if you continue down and a path of expansion, you will go through it more than once.
Yes.
Okay?
Well,
Because,
you go
as
through
you
it
said,
as many times as you have big sectors of your personality that are in resistance to how the universe is unfolding itself.
Exactly. And one of the reasons that I had my most recent one was because I was engulfed in duality.
Mm-hmm.
That was the primary reason. I was engulfed in gender norms and darkness and light, and, I can surround myself and just go into light, pull the light in, et cetera, et cetera. I would do things saying, oh, yes, I'm looking at darkness, but it was, always something more sort of outside of myself. And I had done so much work. I had done inner child work. People would say, I was one of the most unconditionally loving people they had ever met. But what I came to find out was that in looking at things through the lens of duality, okay, I was not anywhere near unconditional love. I couldn't
No,
be.
well, by definition, you can't be.
Exactly. Because the thing is that, so I want to talk about it as darkness and light, because that is the one I think that most people understand it as more tangibly. And essentially, they're one and the same. It is only our perception, and what I mean by that is this, okay? That if one, I've had instances of people say, go to a certain ritual, okay, with pagans, okay? And they go to that and they feel like, oh my gosh, that's just negative. These people are doing this, that, or the other. It's against whatever their tradition is. And so they view that as being darkness. Whereas the other people who are engaging in this ritual and having a lovely time and coming into their own evolutionary state through it, view it as light.
Mm-hmm. I have two things to say about that, but please finish what you were just about to say. I interrupted you.
That's not a problem. So the thing is, once we start to realize that these are only our perceptions, then and only then can we really look at our darkness. Because then and only then are we not judging it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Then and only then can we look at it as the gift that it is. It is our alignment with something that makes us uncomfortable on whatever level, okay, to expand our awareness.
Mm-hmm.
It is love. It is all love. Because whatever I'm aligning with is teaching me to love me, and thereby everything and everybody else. So to avoid things and to see things as duality will never get you into a state of constant expansion.
Mm-hmm.
Not fast expansion. Not into a state of like pure self-love. As a matter of fact, I did mention at the start of this that my grandfather is passing, and I spent all day yesterday with my family, a bunch of members of my family. And then this morning I woke up and I thought, this is the first time I've spent with this side of the family and huge members of the family. And, I never was triggered, not even once. And this is from noon until 10 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm amazed, and especially under those conditions, But yeah, it can be done.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the can. I am walking proof of it. Anything can be done. When we start working through this perception of duality, what ends up happening, okay, is we start to really feel empowered and know how limitless we truly are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that the limits that we impose limits on ourselves. I still do that. Of course I do that. I love the challenge.
Sure.
Why not, right? Yeah. Absolutely,
Limitation is the
wonderful.
nature. Limitation is the nature of 3D and 4D reality, and it's not bad. This limitation is necessary to embody. It's necessary to concretize divine impulse, and without that limitation, this limitation is part of the purpose of all of creation. And at the same time, while we're in this limitation and experiencing it as with the most immediacy and poignancy that we can, it's also necessary that we view it from outside of it, from the perspective of unity, from the perspective of spirit, from the perspective of transcendence. And it's like it's the 2 feet that we walk on in this human incarnation. One is limitation, one is transcendence.
Yes, absolutely. So maybe now we can get into this concept of gender and divine feminine, divine masculine, what all that really means, doesn't mean, etc. And I know that we just talked a few days ago, and you were telling me about this wonderful story of how you came about some of your realizations about gender. Would you like to tell that story?
Oh, that's story. Okay, so yeah, so back when I was a wee sproglet, actually on the path as a fairly newly minted Sufi. I was subscribing to a lot of the feminist and Jungian theory that was about me, second wave feminism, and the Jungian theories of archetypes and masculine, feminine, blah blah. Okay, so I have this friend. Rodney has a master's degree in mathematics, and the best thing I can say about his aesthetic sense in general is that it's kind of austere. That's to put it kindly. Someone from the perspective that I had just been mentioning of masculine, feminine would look at him and go, this man is totally out of touch with his feminine side. He's a very gentle man. He's also a very powerful man. And extremely respectful of everyone. And so it's not to say that he was a redneck or particularly coarse in, because he perceives subtle energies very, very clearly, and that's the world that he lives in, and works as a longshoreman. So that's Rodney. So I'm watching him with his newly born daughter. So she was maybe 2 months, 3 months old at the time. And he was walking around with her in his garden in a, one of those sacks that there's a word for it. She was hanging on his chest in this little baby hammock thingamajiggy, and he was walking around. And I had to do this double, triple, fourple take because the quality of presence and nurturing and support was so masculine. And I'm going, this is masculine nurturing. This is not his feminine side coming out in a nurturing way. This is masculine. And it totally changed my perspective.
Or what we perceive masculine, to be, right? In this energy.
And I began deconstructing my whole perception and my framework, my personal framework about how these things work. And shortly after that, I began having some experiences in my own practice and on retreat of perceiving the energies and the world and the realms and the movements of consciousness that are ontologically prior to these dualities of masculine, feminine, and even of form altogether, so beyond archetype. And the roll-up for me, all right, cutting to the chase, is, and this is part of why you and I get along as well as we do on this, and what kind of brought us together is we're looking at this and going, this whole notion of masculine, feminine, the way that we've been perceiving it in the consciousness counterculture, is somewhere between not the whole truth and pure nonsense. And so I'm all about degenderizing these things and going at an experiential level to a place where these dualities of gender don't exist, and human essence and how those energies operate are one thing. And they operate the same regardless of whether you happen to be hitched to a male body or a female body, or how you perceive your particular gender in any particular moment. There are things that are more fundamental than that. And so I suspect that we'd be seeing the switchboard light up like a Christmas tree if we actually were receiving calls right now, because I know this is going to fly totally in the face of a lot of people's dearly held beliefs and subscriptions about how these things work. And
absolutely.
It is how I perceive these things to work now, having been through the other model and got from it what I could.
Yes, absolutely. And, similarly to you, well, I actually didn't study gender in the context of, women's studies or feminist studies. I actually studied gender in the context of science, of anthropology. Okay, so human behavioral studies, which is, quite different. And having done that is one of my areas of emphasis in anthropology. I came to this space in my life. I mean, my whole life I knew that, this construct of, whatever this being a boy or a girl and things like that just didn't make any sense to me. Didn't. And I tried at times to, fit into one or the other, and I never really just, I just never fit in either. And I went through a transitional period where, I was asking myself whether or not I may be, a transgender man, but that didn't fit. And so I started looking into these concepts of divine feminine and divine masculine. And one day I was sitting in meditation because I had heard, well, Kim, you need to get more in touch with your divine masculine. Because I was having what experiences were with what a lot of people call toxic masculinity coming out of me. And I didn't like that. And I wasn't raised, primarily around men who displayed hardly, toxic masculinity. The men that I was raised around were, very much businessmen, scholarly types. The women in my family have always been very strong and opinionated and things like this. And this is going back to, my great aunts and my grandmother and all of that. And there's a lot of variables in there. But anyway, so when I was sitting there, what I heard was, Kim, it's the same thing. Your divine masculine and your divine feminine are the same thing. So before that, I always felt in when I was feeling like I was really in my spirituality, when I was really in, this space of oneness and with love and things, that was somehow, I was equating that with femininity, with feeling with femininity. And then I learned, oh my gosh, look, there are all these aspects to yourself that some people are equating with masculinity, but they're really not masculine. They're just you.
Your study of anthropology is so valuable in that regard, because when we start actually looking at how other societies, other cultures, pre-technological societies, postmodern societies in different places in the West, we begin to get a sense of just how huge the spectrum of what is considered masculine, what is considered feminine, what is male role, what is female role, all these different things. It's wild. And we begin to see
and even
how,
if we look at Western culture, okay, high heels were originally invented for men.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be like, especially with nobility, it was the men who wore makeup every day, that wore wigs every day, that had the more ornate clothing, And now this switched over, and then we accept that as being, well, okay, this is the way that women naturally are the ones who like pretty things, and and makeup. And women are supposed to this and this and this, and this is somehow when we're told this is natural. We're told that, and we're told that for men, feeling is not natural. But, I've looked into cultures. There are large cultures. I've traveled around the Middle East, for instance, where it is considered the gender norm for men to be more affectionate with their male counterparts than it is for women.
Indeed.
Publicly.
And they'll walk hand in hand down the street.
Yes.
Or with their arms around each other.
You didn't even know. Yeah, we joke about this. He's like, he came to the United States, and another friend of his from India said, "Oh, we can't hold hands here." And he said, "Well, why?" And so his friend said, "Well, because people will think we're gay." And he said, "Well, what is gay?" He didn't even, to him it was just like, he conducts himself that way because he's heterosexual, because he's in this culture and he enjoys this culture, but at the same time, he still thinks it's kind of silly.
It's totally silly, actually.
Yes, and he is, I will tell you, like one of the most feeling, loving, caring individuals that you could ever want to meet. Absolutely, So, and it was funny too because yesterday when I was hanging out with my family, there was somebody there that is actually not my biological family, but anyway, extended family. And this person kept saying, "Oh, this is a guy thing, or this is a guy thing, or this is a guy thing." And I just thought, oh my God, well, because this person obviously, and he was in a male body, felt attacked for whatever reason. We were talking about video games. I personally, I love video games, but I don't play video games because, they become addictive to me. I don't like the violent ones necessarily, but, So that's the only reason I don't play them. And then, unbeknownst to him, but he was saying this is a guy thing, because in his reality, in his marriage and his relationship is what he explained to me, his wife was telling him that this is a guy thing. Okay? So it's all about perception. We know, because statistics show 63%, I think was the last thing that I read, 63% of gamers are actually in female bodies. Okay? And, this is, they did studies on this. So I guess it's not a guy thing. It's what is perceived. Also, so people talk to me about, things like biology and hormones and things of that nature. There have been many studies that were looking for certain things. So they did studies with twins. What's the word I'm looking for? Exact twins. That's not what they're called.
Identical twins.
Identical twins. Thank you. That was the word I was looking for. And what they found. Okay, so they took, I think it was something like, it was a lot of sets of identical twins. where one of them grew up to be homosexual and the other one grew up to be heterosexual, okay? And they looked at their DNA, they looked at their hormones, they looked at, just all of this different biology. And what they found was there was no biological difference to create, this sexual preference. There was no biological difference to create this behavior, okay? So that's interesting, right? So, we're being told that, oftentimes, especially by heterosexual people in the spiritual community, that, do you ever notice that homosexual couples, one of them has masculine energy and the other one has feminine energy? Really? Well, I have a lot of friends who happen to be homosexual and in couples, long-term couples, some married. And what I noticed is that what appears to be on the outside is not what's really going on when you get to know them. That they, just like everybody else, everybody has, this unique relationship, okay, with whatever you're calling gender, okay? And when we don't allow ourselves to have that, okay, it's that limit really stifles us.
Yes.
It is one of the most limiting things on the face of the earth, and we can't get it from somebody else. So I want to talk about that with twin flames. We cannot get that from somebody else. Okay, I don't care if they are your twin. Unique to you, okay? We're not aligning with, there's this concept, this dogma in twin flame reality, that we're aligning with, our other half, okay? And the primary reason for that is because we're missing this masculine energy or we're missing this feminine energy to whatever extent. And that is not true. That is not true whatsoever. It could be with a certain set of twins that maybe, because we are complementary. That's true. Okay. So maybe, I'm missing, some characteristic that could be valuable for me, but it's a characteristic. Okay. And it could look like something like gender, but it's not primarily that. That goes into this whole concept of what is binary gender. So there's this assumption of male-female. And we know that biologically speaking, because there's been many, 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 many studies recently, biologists, geneticists, etc., that there are not two sexes.
Yeah.
Biologically speaking. There is way too much variance within the brain, within hormonal makeup, et cetera. It just goes on and on and on. To say that there are actually two different biological sexes, let alone gender, which is behavior. Okay?
Exactly.
And most of your native cultures, the variables when it came to gender, they're like staggering. Just what we know, because a lot of the stuff is, we've lost it. But many, many, many of the native cultures, say here in North America and in South America, were very egalitarian when it came to gender. Okay? The colonists that came over here oftentimes would perceive them as a matriarchy. And the reason for that is because they were very biased and they didn't know how to see things beyond the binary.
Yes.
That's why. But then when we look at it from a modern perspective as scientists, and we read what they write, and then we do the archaeology, and we talk to, the peoples that are left from that culture, et cetera. We do a lot of this research. What we find out is, this is much more egalitarian. Okay? Which is interesting. And in those types of societies, and there are a lot of them, and there were some where there was more of a binary, but the majority weren't. The majority actually just allowed for people to, we sort of have this thing because, females carry babies and that sort of thing. And, but at the same time, they were saying, okay, well, this person over here doesn't want to do that. That's not how they're born. Maybe they're homosexual. Maybe they're, what we call transgender, whatever that looks like. But there was never like this staunch belief that everybody had to fit into this binary gender thing, because they understood that it just wasn't, it was a construct they were using in order to survive in their environment. And you and I have talked about this, and I wanted to...
The roll-up for me,
Mm-hmm.
The roll-up for me is dress the way you want, have sex with the people that you want, assuming that there's consent and all of that, and it's a fit. Don't worry about whether it's male, female, masculine, feminine, this or that, because all of that stuff is a construct.
Hello? Oh, hello? Oh, okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I was trying to screen somebody, but they left, and
okay.
So you were
all
saying that all of this, Sorry, technical difficulty.
It's pretty much a construct. It's pretty much, and especially that becomes clear as you were saying, as you begin looking at the conceptions of what gender looks like in different cultures and in different time periods, and so. From the perspective of spirit, and this is kind of what it gets back to for me, soul is genderless.
Yes. But it's not unexpressive. Therefore, it's not androgynous. Yes. Yes. Our spirit is genderless. Our soul is actually not.
Well, okay. You and I have a difference in terminology. I will agree with you.
Yes.
Kim and I have been through this a couple of different times. We just have different terminologies for the same thing. So I'll go with that. Soul has a direction. Spirit is genderless.
Yes, because soul is where a lot of our desires for this lifetime lie. It's fourth dimensional reality space. Yes? And we need those desires.
Yeah.
Yes. Otherwise, we wouldn't go forward here on the earth plane. It doesn't care. It was put to me not too long ago by one of my shaman friends like this. He said, okay, here's the thing. The spirit, and he calls it the spirit as well. The spirit doesn't care. It doesn't care. It's like everything is just lovely, fine, beautiful. It's just, I am expanding in order to expand. I am love, da, 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 da. But the spirit won't pay the rent because it doesn't desire to. It doesn't really care if it has the shelter because it knows that the shelter is an illusion. So that's why we need the soul. Yeah.
In that abode, there's no time, there's no space, there's no form, there's no mind, there's no limitation. And so everything is totally groovy. And there is that of us which, in a sense, is a movement of that spirit into manifestation, towards manifestation, that, to use your terminology, we can call the soul. And it has a direction, it has a purpose, and it has a trajectory through this human life and back to source, which actually is happening continuously.
Correct. And that is not where twin flames reside. Twin flames are actually the spirit. They're the same source. Okay? They are not the same soul. Well, sometimes they can have same soul space. But ultimately, the actual twin flame is same spirit. And since spirit, since our divine being, doesn't have a gender, why would you need to have that complementary to come back together, source to source? You don't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you don't.
Now, you could decide because that's the thing with twin flames. It's just there are so many variables, okay? So you could have decided that in this lifetime, you wanted to play with those things, and that's great, okay? No criticism, because that could be true. What people are saying could be true in one person's reality space, or, a twin couple's reality space, okay, about the divine the masculine, feminine. Absolutely it can, but it's not true for everyone. And this is what I see in the twin flame community a lot, okay, is that these people are, taking the dogma from whatever religion that they have learned or whatever path, whether it's New Age or Christianity or Muslim or whatever it is, and they then impose it onto the twin flame, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Not only are they doing that, but they're also imposing their own personal beliefs and paths and, whatever is going on with them. They're not looking beyond their own nose, and then they're calling themselves twin flame gurus at the time. They're going to come and they're going to help you. When they can't even begin to see what your personal path with your twin is, because they can't look beyond their own nose. I have this guaranteed method. There is no guaranteed method for anything. Do we as luminaries, do we have tools to be able to speed things up for you if you utilize the tools? Absolutely, we do. But nothing is guaranteed, particularly when you are dealing with someone, even though it's your same source. Yes, source has to come back to source, okay? But your twin could decide, I want to do this over here. So, and we're talking about the soul, and this is why I differentiate the soul and the body space of that particular individual. And I have seen it where, lock-ins happen because of that. Where the body and the soul of this particular twin was very stubborn, and that aspect of their being, those aspects of their being, then, forget it. It's not going to happen. I knew one person who, went on for 10 years until finally the spirit self walked into another person. Mm-hmm. Because the spirit self wanted to actually do whatever it was that their mission was. That does happen, but it also happens that you have to figure out, not everybody, is supposed to necessarily, be together romantically. Most twins are, but not all.
Yeah, and like you said, there's no guarantee.
Mission. Yeah, well, you can't guarantee something to people because that's just false.
Well,
it's just
having,
unless you can see it as being their path,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I can't base that on my path.
Having met my twin and been shattered by the encounter. Really shattered. I do understand how incredibly compelling it is to meet this apparently separate being with holding your same or very, very similar soul vibration, and that encounter magnetizes. As I said at the outset of the show, the personal ego is oriented mostly to what's missing. And so it magnetizes all of those needs, puts them up in our face, and the ego goes, the fulfillment of my being is out there in this other person, and therefore we are to be together. But what you're really perceiving in that is the completion of your being that already exists in the unmanifest, where if you could encounter it there, you relax about the whole thing, and you have a much clearer picture from that place of clarity about how this how this apparent bifurcation happens, so that this soul, the totality of the soulness, which subsists the vast bulk of it, if you can speak in those terms, outside of time and space, the purpose for which it has in incarnating in this particular way for a few breaths, and it doesn't care anything about your egoic homeostasis. It cares only about accomplishing the thing that it came here to do with regard to its work in unfolding itself
exactly
as divinity in
which is exactly why, let's take it down a notch, okay? Which is exactly why, right? What you're talking about is what most gurus are calling, 5D awareness. So what they're calling 5D is basically spirit self, okay? Mm-hmm. That's where the connection is. And that's the only space that you really need to worry about, okay, when it comes to your twin. You need to figure out and get the tools to take you there, yeah? But once you're in that awareness, you don't care. Everything, because you trust and you know that, you know what, everything is unfolding as it should.
Everything is unfolding as it should, regardless of your mind's editorial commentary to the contrary. And let me say it one more time. Completion that each of us are drawn to our twin to try to accomplish in 3D and 4D already exists.
Yes.
It already exists. And when we can disengage our identifications from 3D and 4D and perceive life from the perspective of 5D and 6D, the purpose of the whole dance, and it is a dance, comes into view, and
you just embrace it.
And you just embrace it because that's what you do. It's not, oh, I should.
You say,
How cool is this? This is amazing.
It's amazing. It's like, oh, my God. So I split myself in half, and I have now got this support of this other spirit. I don't have to just do it all myself in this body.
There is no other yourself except that unit.
Exactly. But that's, my perception of it is it's like, oh, okay, I'm half of me is in this body. Half of me is in the other body, if you want to call it, in the space of now, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Just in the space of now, right? I'm not actually split in parts, though, in two.
No. Correct,
no.
Yes.
It's just the perception of being in the two bodies in this moment of now, okay?
It's like having two computers hooked to the same. It's like having two computers hooked to the same server, viewing all the same lists of files on separate screens, but the server is where all the action really is. So, I mean, in a technological metaphor.
Right. And so our job is our job in that is we support no matter what. Okay? No matter what happens, we are supporting our own mission. So all we really have to do is think about us. All we really have to do is get ourselves into a space of a great deal of self-love. That's it. Everything else is gravy. And we trust ourselves because, I give people a lot of, trust exercises. That's really important. A big part of that, right? Because people will come to me, oh, Kim, I have this, my twin is, I don't know what to do. I'm compelled to speak to him or her. Or, what should I do this? No, let's sit and see. How do you feel about it? How do you genuinely feel about it? Do you really feel like you want to do that? Yeah, but this guru or that guru says you shouldn't do this when and where and da-da-da. is that guru on your path? You know? No, they're not. So is it what you want? And even if it means that this, person, your twin, is going to come to you and is going to, yell at you or whatever, so what? Because it's about the energy space, okay? Yeah. Because you learn that energy space is everything, okay? And you follow whatever it is, and sometimes, people will come to me and they'll say, oh, I'm not feeling my twin. Oh, good, that's good. I don't think this person is my twin. No, it's good because you have to, even if you're supposed to, and your mission is to be together in a relationship of some kind, okay? You've got to be completely independent in your soul space, in your body space, okay, in order to deal with that energy.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's never going to work. Okay, it's oxymoronic, right? Because you have to be independent in order to work together.
Yes.
But that's not any different, really, when you think about it in how life on this planet works in general, right? Because when we're too codependent, and people get what codependence is very confused. Because unfortunately people have been writing all sorts of things about codependence which are not true. Codependence means that you are basically, you in your consciousness are depending upon other people things for you. That's what the bottom line of codependence. It doesn't mean that we aren't, as a collective, all working together. Yes, we are. But how that works is that you work on you, because who you are, your uniqueness and your beauty in your life, and who that is, no matter what you're doing, you're working along with everyone else, every other being. Not just on this planet, but way beyond it. So if you're not being true to your being, it doesn't matter that much what you're doing outside of that. And being true to your being can look like all sorts of interesting things. Because people get this idea that being true to your being means you have to be an illuminary, you have to be a guru, you have to be a healer of some sort.
No, it's enough.
And we're all that anyway.
The rest of it will be shown to you once you have a felt sense. Not get it from a book, not subscribe to somebody else's, not believe what a reader or a teacher tells you, but when you uncover in your own deep substance what that is, then you'll know. Nobody will be able to talk you out of it or reframe it for you into something else, because you'll just know, the same way that you know how to ride a bicycle. And once you have that as a living presential reality as close to you as your own breath, then it changes everything.
It absolutely does. Absolutely. Yeah.
So when I was a kid...
It's a wonderful, wonderful ride, and we all have our own unique challenges. And I just wanted to tell you, we have 5 minutes left. You and I talked about taking calls. Do we have time to take a call, or shall we just? We have had one person come in, and I think they're having some kind of technical difficulty because I tried to hit the screening and it's not working. I don't know. I'm going to have to figure this out. Yeah. So we've only had one person actually call in. And maybe it's because it's Sunday morning and nobody wants to be up. Because I know I have a lot of people who said they wanted to. I have no idea what's going on. So, yeah, we do not have that option. There you go. Yeah. So, but we did talk about, what were you saying about as children?
When I was a kid, my parents were different religions. My mother is an atheist and my father's an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And I was not raised in a religious tradition. I had no religious upbringing, whatever. Holidays were secular occasions. But, you know, you get Bible stories and that sort of stuff because the culture is just full of all of that. And I heard about the soul, and the image I had at age, 7 or 6 or 8 or whatever it was, is something about the size and shape of a walnut that comes out of heaven, comes into your body. You've got this soul. You can lose it, which means you're SOL. You can find it again if you do the right stuff. And then when you die, it goes back to heaven or wherever it came from. And let me approach this from a different perspective. The reality is that the coming of the soul on earth, put that in air quotes, is not historical. It's happening at every breath.
Yes.
It's a continual renewal from source. And it's, there's so much nonsense that has crept into, limited perspective, that has crept into the consciousness counterculture from misinterpretations of Eastern teachings. I'm beginning to identify.
Show right there.
That's a whole other show. The influence of early 20th century theosophy, which was basically a made-up path, is profound and ongoing, and people just repeat and repeat and repeat assertions.
Maybe we should do another show about that. Yeah, because
I think we should do that.
I
would love
to. 2 minutes left, and that's we totally should. We should, because both of us have a lot of knowledge in this area, and
I've got some hobby horses about it, which I would love to ride around.
Absolutely. Or I'd like to invite people to, again, call in and or, contact us here online. You can go to my website, which is kimgilster.com. I also have a link to my YouTube channel, which is a Spiritual Synergist, and also my Facebook. And I believe yours is illuminedliving.com. People can contact you there. Because we're really open to talking about a lot of stuff. If you want to be a guest on the show.
Yeah, if you want to be a guest on the show. That'd be wonderful.
We'd love to have some guests, we're open to people from all backgrounds. We do not judge. We understand that everybody's path is absolutely valid, and everybody is where they're at a given time, and that's okay. Okay.
And you can only start from where you're at. You can't start from where you're not.
Been there. Exactly. Nobody's wrong and nobody's right. Oh my gosh, that's confusing. It's just what resonates with us. That's what's going to serve us. And that's what we need to concentrate on, because that is the spiritual path. So until next time, which is 2 weeks from today, you have a wonderful, wonderful life. And, if you need more information about your twin flame, you need, coaching, basically a big part of what I do, relationship coaching, etc. And I can recognize all the different lineups, those that are not twin flame but have twin energy, twin, what I call twin soul, soulmates. People call it soulmates. Just there's so many different lineups. Yeah. So. Hello.
All right.
Are you still there?
Well, I'm still here.